Okay, thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll go ahead. Oh, there's Sister Brinley right there. Hello, Sister Brinley. Glad you could make it. Does anyone have any specific order they would like to go? Elder Sorensen, since you are kind of battling COVID, would you like to go first so that you can maybe drop off first, or did you want to
I hadn't planned on dropping off, but if you would like me to go first, I'm happy to do it.
You don't have to drop off at all, but if you'd like to go first, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying my wife and I have lived in Africa for 6.5 years. For 5 of those years, we had our kids with us. For the last time we went as a missionary couple. And it was interesting, there were no church Christmas traditions when we first went. People were just coming into the church, and this is back in the very early 90s. But it was so fun. On our mission, the last Christmas we were there, our first mission president was very staid, and so the celebrations were very quiet. Our second mission president was a Canadian and somewhat staid, but not. He kind of let the missionaries open up and do some of the things they wanted to do. And it was really one of the more enjoyable things that I have experienced in life. And so what I wanted to do was share some of the videos I took. I won't share them all with you because there's probably an hour's worth, but I'll share some of my favorites with you. And these are things that actually the elders and the sisters themselves put together. Most of our mission, it was probably about 75 to 80% Africans. We had no white sisters. We had a few American elders. So the first, let's see, let me pull this up then, 16. Okay, so let me just kind of, this one starts off just a little bit slow. Okay, so the song you're about to hear was actually written by the elders, directed. I've forgotten the names now, but this elder is actually quite the musician. So I'm going to share, and okay, here's the first song. Okay, so
Elder Sorensen, what country was that?
this is in Brazzaville. It's the Republic of Congo, the old French Congo on the north side of the Congo River. They're
Okay, we had a
singing
couple of
Lingala.
comments. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a number of there's about 3,500 languages in Africa. And so there's a number of trade languages. And so the one everybody's heard of is the one over in East Africa, which is, of course, now it just left my mind, but Swahili. And Swahili started off as a trade language, and it became so common that it's now become an actual language for many tribes. It's their original, spoken at home. But this is Lingala, which is a local trade language that is used up and down the banks of the Congo River. The other side of the river is the old Belgian Congo. And at one point, before the Europeans came, both sides of the river were ruled by the Congo tribe, and Congos were headed in what's now Brazzaville. And Brazzaville is probably one of the few, after decolonization, Brazzaville is one of the few African cities that's kept its French name, because during World War II, Brazzaville was actually the official capital of France, and de Gaulle has an enormous house just a mile or two outside of town. It's now the French ambassador's house, but there's a huge house called the de Gaulle House. And so they're very proud of their history, very lovely people.
Okay.
The elders and the sisters that you're reading are mostly not from Brazzaville. They tend to come from the other side of the river, Lubumbashi, Kinshasa. Some of them are from Cote d'Ivoire. I think by this part in our mission, we'd actually received a few English-speaking sisters from South Africa as well. So they're basically from all over. And none of them are actually Congolese, but I guess because they're mostly from, one of the two Congos, they all speak Lingala. All right, I'm gonna queue up another one here. This is one more with the elders, and I've got my favorite is actually with the sisters at the end, and I'll. Uh-oh. I've lost my.
Should we have somebody jump in while you Okay, there we go.
Voici la mission. Est-ce que tu as la conscience? Est-ce que tu as l'amour? Est-ce que tu as l'humilité? Est-ce que tu as la foi? Est-ce que tu as la passion? Est-ce que tu as la vertu? Est-ce que tu as la diligence? Est-ce que tu as la paix? Oh, cher
That's great, Elder Sorensen.
Yeah, you can see they didn't quite teach the white elders how to dance, but they did their best. And this last one is, sorry, let's see, 1859. This is a very moving one for me, but can you see it?
Not yet.
What?
Not yet.
We can't
All
see
right,
it yet.
let me. All right, so this was put together by the sisters. It's the Christmas play. Baby Jesus. We had a number of Malagases in our mission. Malagases are the native-born inhabitants of Madagascar. And most of the elders they have enormously long names. Elder Rosa Fiore Manana is one of the ones I remember. He was a favorite of ours, but the smallest of all the sisters was a Malagasy. And so the little sister you see curled up on Mary's lap is one of our Malagasy sisters. And this was written and put together by the sisters had their own district. And so this is written and put together by the sisters district.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
Can you all sing?
Yeah.
So these are the three shepherds. The sister who keeps popping her head in is Sister Skinner. She and her husband were humanitarian missionaries with us.
Ne craignez pas, car je vous annonce une bonne nouvelle, qui sera pour tous les peuples le sujet d'une grande joie. Aujourd'hui, dans la ville de David, il vous est né un sauveur, le Seigneur Jésus. Allons tous l'adorer.
Chantons tous les cantiques de gloire au Seigneur. Chantons tous les cantiques de gloire au Seigneur, car nous sommes tous réunis. Honorez majesté au Seigneur Jésus-Christ. Il régnera à jamais. Chantons tous les cantiques de gloire au Seigneur, car nous sommes tous réunis. Honorez majesté au Seigneur Jésus-Christ. Il vit et régnera à jamais.
And yeah, those were taken at our stake center in Jada, which is out on the edge. We have 3 stakes in Brazzaville now. When we first lived there with all our kids, there were just a couple of scruffy little branches and a few hundred members. And we came back 30 years later and 3 stakes and probably 8,000 members or so at this point. And then there's a town on the coast called Point Noir, which has a big district and also many, many members, probably 4,000 or 5,000 down there at this point.
Wow. Thank you so much, Elder Sorensen.
Yeah, so that's
a great memory. Thank you for sharing those.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a wonderful experience.
Great. Thank you. Who would like to go next? Any takers? Sister Brown?
Sure, I'd be happy to. That was great, Elder Sorensen. My husband and I served our mission in the New Hampshire Manchester mission, and we worked in Portland, Maine. And we were kind of on the other side of that because Portland is one of the cities that has set up an infrastructure to welcome African asylum seekers. And so we worked with many Africans from Congo Brazzaville, from Angola, Burundi, Rwanda. So that was great for me to see that. That was just very, very good memories for us too, on the other side of the world, working with African members. I am originally from England, Cambridge, England. And there are some very specific traditions that we have in England around Christmas time. I have been gone for, I want to preface this with, I've been gone for 45 years. So whether they still have these traditions or not, I don't know. But I think they still do have many of the traditions that I was just going to mention. And I have a little PowerPoint that I'll share with the Christmas traditions of England. And so I'll just go to that. Let's see if I can find my PowerPoint now. Yeah, there it is. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Christmas traditions in England, of course, this is a lot earlier than even what I remember in this particular slide. But a lot of the Christmas traditions in England actually revolve around food, as I guess they do in the United States as well, and many other countries. But so our big thing is the Christmas dinner. And I kind of went through and marked things so you'd know what they were. For me, Thanksgiving dinner here is my Christmas dinner because we usually have other things for Christmas in our family because we've just had the turkey. But for us in England, turkey was always a very integral part of the Christmas dinner. So we'd always have turkey and chestnut stuffing. Brussels sprouts were very traditional. Cranberry sauce there, I've crossed through. We never had cranberry sauce when I was growing up, but we always had parsnips, roast potatoes, and we didn't have the bacon, and I don't know, pigs in a blanket we didn't have. But we had the turkey, and then we had something called bread sauce, and it's made with milk, bay leaves, I think cloves and onion, and you kind of cook that up, and then you soak old crusty bread, stale bread usually, not the crusts, but the middle. You know, it was a good way to use up old bread. And it's actually very good. And so that bread sauce right there in the middle is very much a Christmas tradition that we had, serving with the turkey. So those are, like I say, great food traditions. Another thing we always had was mince pies. And I don't think I've ever tasted a mince pie in the United States that is quite like a mince pie in England. That was my job as a teenager. My job for Christmas was to make about 6 dozen mince pies every year, and they're not the big ones. They're always the little tiny ones like you see here. And we had something called Robertson's mincemeat that you can find here if you go to an English store, and it's the best. Very, very good tasting. And so mince pies were very much a favorite. In fact, we had an aunt and cousin that used to join us every year for Christmas. They'd come down to Cambridge. And the first thing that my cousin would do, when he was quite a bit older than me, but first thing he'd do when he'd walk in the door was say, "Vivian, have you made the mince pies?" It was his favorite. So mince pies are a big favorite. Also Christmas pudding, you've probably seen that. Usually have brandy poured over it and then they light it up. We didn't have brandy in ours, but and then usually one of the things they do is put a threepence. Well, in my day it was a threepence. They don't have threepences anymore in England. They were a little, I think they were a 12-sided coin, and they put a threepence or a sixpence in the Christmas pudding. So you'd have to be careful as you ate it, because you might find the little sixpence in the middle. And then to top it all off, with the mince pies and the Christmas pudding, always custard. And it's a different custard than in the United States. Kind of there's a specific brand called Bird's custard. You can buy that here too. You go to an English store. And we always had custard and Christmas pudding and mince pies. Like I say, everything's around food. Another thing we always did at Christmas dinner was always had Christmas crackers. And you can find these now. Costco sometimes sells them, other places. They're kind of expensive here, but we'd always have Christmas crackers, and you would cross your arms, and you would have cracker on one hand, this hand, and a cracker in the other, and whoever was on your left or right had the other end, and then we'd pull, and you'd pull it, and there's a little snap in there, and always in there was a little trinket and a hat, and sometimes a little funny saying. So something like this, you'd have these little silly little things in there. These are the snaps that snap, and you'd have these little paper hats that everybody would put their paper hats on, and get their little prize. That was always a big thing especially for the children, was the Christmas crackers. Anything else about one more other? Oh yeah, there's a Christmas. That's how you do it. Well, we'd always cross our arms, but they didn't. They don't. They're not at this point. Another thing about Christmas in England is Boxing Day. Boxing Day is the 26th, the day after Christmas. And years ago, this was the day when the lords of the manor and the aristocrats would, and I think Downton Abbey, would box up some of the dinner or something, and put little gifts or something in a box and give it to their hired help, their employees, as a way of thanking them for the work that they'd done to help during the year. And so that's the traditional Boxing Day, but I don't think that's really anymore. It's kind of like the Christmas bonus, but Boxing Day's just a day usually of fun, sports as well, so soccer and some other things. But I think that's my last slide. Yep, it is. So those are the things I remember. I also remember, let me get out of this. Okay. Another thing I remember is, I can't figure out how to, there we go. In my family, my mother was actually basically an orphan. Her mother died when she was very young. She was considered, her father was considered unfit to take care of her. And my dad's mother died in the flu epidemic of 1918, the Spanish flu. And so he was kind of orphaned too. He did have a stepmother later on, but we didn't have a lot. Because of that, there weren't a lot of family traditions that were passed down to our family. So we made up a lot of our own. And one of the things was, and this is dangerous, we'd always have candles on the tree in a little holder, and we'd light on Christmas Eve, we'd light the candles. Of course, you couldn't light them all the time because they sink, they go down. So we'd light them on Christmas Eve and then blow them out, and then on Christmas Day we'd light them too. That would be considered a great fire hazard these days, obviously, but we did do that. And we never had, we always had pillowcases at the bottom of the bed, not stockings, which was kind of nice because you made a big haul, but they were usually mainly full of air. And then we in our family, we'd never open our Christmas gifts until the afternoon. We'd have our pillowcases, which were usually full of like activity books and things that would keep us occupied while Mother was making the dinner and other things. And then we'd always open our presents around the tree in the afternoon. So that was just our family. I think that was just our family tradition, not necessarily an English tradition. But anyway, that's basically what I've got to share. So I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Okay, Sister Templeman, would you like to go next?
Certainly. Okay. All right. And French traditions, of course, there are common traditions that I won't talk about because they're the same in America, in England, in Germany, just about everywhere, like the Advent calendars, the Christmas trees, the gifts, Santa Claus, whether he's called Santa Claus or Père Noël, lots of food, of course, wreath, lights, Christmas carol, all those things that are common to so many people. Depending on where you are in France, they might change a little bit. And one, because I come from Provence, Marseille, the south, the main avenues of the cities in December are full of vendors displaying clay figurines, what they call the santon. They are handmade and hand painted. And I used to make them, like the manufacturers would give us, my mother and I, those little figurines, and we would paint them all through the month of December with tiny little brushes. It was quite a job. I mean, they're fun to paint if you have to paint one. Once you get to the 100, it's not so much fun anymore. And they depict the people from Provence, from the south of France, not really anything to do with the Bible characters except Joseph and Mary and baby Jesus and the kings and the shepherds. And they do the nativity with all these little people. And some can be quite elaborate, some can be quite large, and they all have something in common. They're very expensive, like very. And of course, when I was a Catholic, we would attend La Messe de Minuit, which is the midnight mass. And a lot of people attend the mass even if they're not Catholic or even if they never go to church. That's one thing that they do because it's almost like a pageant. And so it's a lot of fun. And I remember the church where I used to go, we had a priest who was very good at making nativity, and he had a whole floor on the church that was full of big, not life size, but let's say 2 feet tall figurines. And he would have a whole village with wheels and windmills, and everything was working. Everything had a little motor. So it was a lot of fun to go to church just to watch what he had done that year. And of course, the Réveillon, which is on Christmas Eve after the midnight mass. And of course, also on New Year's Eve too, but we do it on Christmas Eve. And we continue to do these Réveillon even here with my family. We always have Christmas dinner very, very late at night. Then they have the 13 desserts that remind people of Jesus Christ and his 12 apostles. And it doesn't really matter what they are as long as there are 13 of them. So you can have dried fruits, you can have cookies, cakes, whatever. Then of course, the Réveillon wouldn't be a Réveillon without oysters and mussels and shrimps and what they call the fruits de mer. And I know they don't look appetizing to you, but they're very good. I guess it's an acquired taste, so it's quite all right. But most households will have oysters for Christmas. And so that's something that the missionaries had a tough time dealing with, eating raw oysters on Christmas. And of course, la Buche de Noel, which is a rolled cake that made to look like a log. And a lot of time they will put little figurines on top of the cake, like a little woodsman or a little bear or something to make it more attractive for the kids. They also have in Canada, they have the Canadian Tourtiere, which is just a meat pie. And it's a pie with different kinds of meat like beef and pork and mixed with the onions. And that's very common and very, very tasty in Canada. And then on the first Sunday after Christmas, after New Year's, and we have what we call le gâteau des rois or la galette des rois, and we have those cakes, and we go to friend's house and we share the cake or the pastry. And inside those cake there is two things. One is the fava bean, a dried fava bean, and the other one is a little ceramic little thing like a little dog or a little, you know, a little subject in ceramic. So you have to be careful when you eat that you be careful that you don't break a tooth also. And the two people who get the fava beans and the little subject would be the king and the queen of that day. And then the Sunday afterwards, then they will bring the cake or the galette again to their friends to share again. And then they only do it twice. It doesn't go forever, just twice. And I wanted to also show you one of the songs. There you go.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Okay. Sir Brinley, you are up. And you are muted. Still muted. There we
Okay,
go.
there we go. So my ancestors are all from Sweden. My mother was born there, and all of my grandparents were born there. I've been to Sweden 4 or 5 times. And one of the things that we do to help our children and grandchildren to learn to relate to their grandparents and their ancestors is to celebrate the festival at Christmas that they would have enjoyed had they grown up in Sweden, just to help them relate to their ancestors. So the biggest Christmas celebration is called Santa Lucia, and that's where a beautiful young girl dresses in white, wears candelabra on her head, and she goes through the town, followed by other young girls and a little parade of young people dressed in different costumes. But that all started because centuries ago, before BC, well, it wouldn't have been before BC because it was when the Christians were being crucified by the Romans. This young girl, who was Santa Lucia, you know, is not Swedish at all. It's let's see, what is that? French? No, not French. Spanish. Santa Lucia. Anyway, she's from another nationality, but for some reason, she would go around through the town and she would hide at night, and she'd have star boys lead her way so that she could see in the night, and she would go to the Christians who were being persecuted and she'd bring food to them. So for some reason, even though it's not a Swedish thing, the Swedish people really picked up on that, and they use her as an example of love and serving others and standing up for what you believe. And so they celebrate Santa Lucia at Christmas time in December. I think it's the 20th of every December. We do it whenever we can get our children together in December, which isn't always on the Santa Lucia day, but we do a pageant, and we have, everybody gets to be, all the children get to be in it, and the girls dress up in white dresses that I have for them with red sashes, and they wear a crown on their head. We don't dare let them carry candles on their head in a crown like they do. In fact, maybe I could share this screen and let you see what it looks like. I can get my cursor to go over there. Share this screen. It would be this one. Can you see that screen? Or do I need to pull it over here?
No, we can see it.
We can see it.
You can see it? Okay, so that's what the girls look like. It doesn't show the star boys. That might be the boys at the back, but I can't see whether they're having stars or not. But anyway, this is what she looks like and carries this candelabra. So we have our young girls in our family, our granddaughters. They get to wear the white dress and the red sash that I provide for them, and they get to draw to see who's going to be Santa Lucia. And they come down our stairway. I was looking for some good pictures to show you of our family, but they come down our stairway down to our lower level, and they're singing the Santa Lucia song. And all of us, the rest of us who are waiting at the bottom in our family room downstairs, we all sing the Santa Lucia song, and they go around all of our family. They go around with a gold plate that has cookies on it, and they pass around the Swedish cookies. And then the Yule Tomten come out. The Yule Tomtens are the little elves. I didn't prepare a picture to show you, but they're little elves that live in the floorboards of the barns in the Swedish homes. And the barns and the homes were connected because the animals in the barns kept the homes warm. And so it was all one building. But these little Yule Tomten would be hiding under the floorboards, and they would come out, and if you left oatmeal for them on Christmas Eve, they would leave gifts for you. But if you didn't, they would wreck your house. And so you'd wake up in the morning and your house was wrecked. But if you treated them right, then they would leave the gifts. So we do this little pageant every year. This time we're doing it on the 20th of December, and the girls will come down with their star boys and the Yule Tomten. And then everybody in the family downstairs there in our family room, they'll close their eyes and we'll play the Yule Tomten song. And the boys will go, the little Yule Tomten will go into a room and bring out all the gifts that I've prepared and put them out in the middle of the floor. And then we kind of do a white elephant thing where you just choose whatever gift. And if you like it, keep it. If you don't, someone else will probably take it from you. But it's just a little, and they love, our grandchildren absolutely love having the Santa Lucia party. One year I thought, oh, our grandchildren have grown too big. They don't fit the dresses anymore. And so I said, we're going to have a different kind of party. So that year we did a Dickens party because my husband's half of his family are Swedish, but the other half are English. So we did celebrate the English, and he talked about his father and his grandfather rather, and what Christmas would have been like for him before he immigrated to America. So we got that in, but normally the kids want to do the Santa Lucia party. They just, when we're gone on missions or something, they just mourn because nobody's there to do the Santa Lucia party for them. So that's what we do. That's our Christmas tradition, and hopefully helps them have an affinity for their Swedish ancestors.
Thank you, Sister Brinley. Okay, I've got just a couple of things. I've decided our family really wasn't great at traditions growing up. The one thing my grandmother did do is typical, I've decided a lot of families did, is my grandmother did make us nightgowns. And the boys were kind of out of luck. They got pajamas that were bought from the store, but the girls got pajamas. And I will tell you, I carried on that tradition. And then a few years ago, I thought, you know what? Nobody seems to be really interested in these anymore. So a couple of years ago, I decided, well, I'm going to just make everybody pillowcases. Because, I mean, my granddaughters seem to get pajamas for everything. So I thought they've got a million sets, so I'm not going to do it. And I thought that was a brilliant thing. I'll just make everybody pillowcases and no big deal. And boy, was there mutiny that year.
Oh,
Everybody, they had fits over no pajama bottoms. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, and so I got it that year. So we're back to making pajama bottoms. And so I've learned, don't mess with tradition. So that's one thing that I have carried on. And I try to pick out flannel fabric that is Christmassy or ties in with something that we did. Like we used to live in Albuquerque, and one year I found fabric that had hot air balloons on it. And when we lived there, the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta is a big deal down there every October. And one year I happened to get lucky and find fabric that had hot air balloons. We did go this year, and I looked high and low for fabric with hot air balloons, but I couldn't find it. So they're getting Yeti snowman pajamas this year. So, but at least they're getting them. No, I will not make pillowcases again. So when my kids were younger, we did, like a lot of people, we did the nativity, and baby Jesus was always the closest doll. And as my daughter got older, Barbie became baby Jesus a lot of times, or Ken. I only have 2 children, and so it was kind of a tricky thing to pull off the nativity, but we worked to help them understand that was an important part, that it just wasn't a Santa Claus and presents. The one thing that we do now, that as I started thinking about traditions, I noticed, food is a big part, and I've loved to see what people do from different countries. And since we love to travel, in our family, it was always potatoes and roast or whatever. But since we love to travel, we do a different country every year for Christmas dinner. And so I always go to the library in about November, and we kind of think, my husband and I think, okay, so what country do we want to do this year? And then we grab a cookbook, and we try out different countries every year for food. Some have been big hits, some have been big misses. And usually the ones that I have an incredibly picky eater for a son-in-law who doesn't like to try much. And so the ones that have meat and potatoes, he's all for. The one that have, something wildly different. He's not really great at trying, but he does try. And but it's been fun. And so it's really late this year and I still haven't figured out what country, but we have had fun. We have had fun doing that. And I think that as I've as I've grown up, I've always worked kind of in some part of family history. But as I've grown up, I've discovered there's a reason like why I like potatoes, and it's because my Lithuanian heritage is all around potatoes. Potatoes, dill, and rye bread. And I could never understand it till I got more into looking at more than just names, dates, and places with my family history and realized that, oh my heavens, that's what those poor Lithuanians ate. You know, potatoes, rye, dill. And but my dad never wanted anything for Christmas, but he always had to have pickled herring. And I never did understand that until I went to Lithuania. And I realized I mean, they eat that for snacks all the time. And I even tried it because it's sold on the street corners. And you know what? It's not too bad. And because when I watched, you know, that's all he ever wanted. He would sit on the couch while we opened presents and he would eat his pickled herring. And at the time, as a 5 and a 6 and a 10-year-old, it looked pretty gross. But you know what? Eaten in the proper context as an adult is pretty darn good. And I can feel like, yeah, I connected to my heritage. And the older I get, the more I want to do that. So it's been kind of fun, and it's fun to try different things like that. And now trying to connect my kids to that kind of heritage, my daughter looks at those little fish, and you know, you can imagine how well that goes over. You know, but if I pull out spaghetti or something, she's all for it. But no Italian in this family, unfortunately. So we have just a few minutes. Elder Farnsworth, Elder Esplin, Sister Esplin, sorry. Elder Sorensen, does anybody have anything else that they might like to add?
I do actually. My mother is Dutch, and in remembrance of her, I will point out that today is St. Nicholas Eve. And tonight is the night that Dutch children will be putting out their shoes with a little bit of straw in each shoe. And St. Nicholas will come riding by and feed his horse and leave presents behind for the children. It's interesting, we tend to forget, we think of Santa Claus only, but St. Nicholas was actually a real person. And he lived in what's now Turkey back in the 4th century. And in fact, he was very famous at the time. He's one of the signatories to the Nicene Creed. But he was also famous for his generosity. He was very wealthy. And back in those days, when girls could not get dowries so that they could marry, their parents would frequently sell them to brothels. And so whenever he heard of any cases like that, he would pay the dowries of the daughters so that they could marry, and was eventually made the patron saint of children by the Catholic Church. But when he comes to Holland, he comes from Spain, and he comes on the prow of a beautiful, beautiful ship, riding a great white horse and all his bishop's regalia. And he used to be accompanied by two black little slaves called Zwarte Piets, Black Peets. And over the last few years, political correctness has wiped the little Zwarte Piets out of the picture. I was reading a Dutch site the other day, and people are still complaining about it, even though it's probably been a decade or so since he's disappeared. And the little Zwarte Piets would run along the rooftops with bags full of candy and toss them into the street, all over every town in Holland during the few weeks before Christmas. And the big Christmas dinner from that is something the Dutch called oliebollen, and it sounds pretty much in English what it is, oil balls. And it's just bread dough. It's like a donut, only you roll it into a big ball and deep fry it, and then roll it into powdered sugar. And
I'll take it.
yeah, people used to give them to us by the dozens.
A scone.
When I was on my mission. By the time Christmas was over, we were so sick of them, we couldn't look at them again for another year. But Anyway, so that's what's happening tonight in Holland, and some of my kids keep that tradition. I know my son Aaron and his kids will be putting out their shoes tonight, and it is a nice tradition, and it actually recognizes a very good and decent human being who's sort of morphed into Santa Claus for the rest of us.
I didn't mention it, but you reminded me that pickled herring is very much a part of our Swedish smorgasbord that we serve on Santa Lucia Day. So you reminded me, pickled herring.
Yeah,
I
we
love
have
it. It's a
Love
big
it.
thing in Holland as well. I pick it up. You can buy it actually at most of the stores in
sure.
town.
Yeah, you can get
you
it.
can buy it.
Sister Millick,
Yes.
I have put our email address in the chat, byufhlmissionaries@gmail.com. And for those of you online, if you would like to email us your Christmas traditions, next Sunday would be happy to share those with classes as they come. So feel free to email us.
Thank you
Okay.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Good
Merry
night.
Christmas. Take care.